Alright, so last but not least for this chapter, the first chapter, we have evaluating trig functions for non-acute angles. So what we're doing today, looking at reference angles, we're going to find exact angle measures given trig values, and then we're going to also use our calculator to approximate some angle measures as well. And one thing to keep in mind is for the tests in this chapter, there are going to be parts that are calculator and there are going to be parts that are no calculator. So knowing how to do these by hand is important. Take a second, pause the video, try those on your own, see how much you've retained from the last couple class lessons. So now let's move on to this. How would you go about figuring out theta given that sine of theta equals 1/2? I mean, up to this point, we've always been given an angle measure. We've always been given this. And we've been using that value, plugging it into this trig function to get the answer there, to get that 1/2. Now we're going about it in a little bit different way. Now what we want to do is we want to see if we can find theta given that. So here's how it goes. We know that sine is positive in 2 quadrants and negative in 2 quadrants. We got to find those angle measures. So 1/2 is a positive value, so I know that sine will be positive in quadrant 1 because everything's positive in quadrant 1. I also know it's positive in quadrant 2 because it's all students, so everything's positive here. Now with the 1/2, what that tells me is that my y is 1, my r is 2. So if I'm looking at this, my y value is 1. Oops, that's not y. My y value is 1. My r value will be 2. Oh, this is 2. 2, 1. How would I go about finding the missing side of this triangle? Hopefully by now you've kind of noticed a common theme. We use the Pythagorean theorem a lot. So you use Pythagorean theorem, find that missing side length. So now what you have to do is you have to figure out what angle measure fits. Alright, so we got our triangle set up. Last what we're doing here, we need to figure out the angle measure. So we have a 1 and a root 3 is legs, 2 is hypotenuse. Hopefully from the 30, 60, 90 triangles, you know that the 30 is opposite the 1. So here our answers were measured from 0 to the terminal side. So that answer there is just 30. So theta would equal 30. And the second one, from here, terminal side, well, this is 30. Well, you know this is 180. So 180 minus 30 puts me at 150. So theta would equal 150. That's it. Alright, so here's the kind of the steps we've figured out. Set up the 2 possible triangles, determine the reference angle, and then from the reference angle came up with what theta would equal. Alright, give these a shot. Let's see what you guys can come up with here for these problems. Alright, so if I want to use a calculator now, first thing I do is find the reference angle using theta, or reference angle for theta using a calculator. Calculator, we'll get into more later, only really finds reference angles. So then from the reference angle, you're figuring out which quadrant or quadrants theta should terminate in, and then you would solve for theta. So here, to plug this in your calculator, you'll find it's a secondary function that looks like this. And you would plug in that 0.9743. Well, keeping in mind, when you're plugging these values in the calculator, turning them into positive numbers will make your life a lot easier. If you keep them negatives, it makes it all sorts crazy. So anyway, plug this in our calculator, which I'll do right now, because not even I know what that is off the top of my head. So we do the sine inverse of 0.9743, and you get about 77. So about 77 degrees. So if theta terminates in quadrant 2, you know the reference angle, what we found is 77. So our answer is starting at 0 to here. So that should be about 103. that's it. For secant, you have to use the reciprocal to find secant. So secant's reciprocal is cosine, and then, so when you're putting it in here, you would have to do the inverse cosine. I messed that up. Inverse cosine. Now, since I took the reciprocal of secant, I have to take the reciprocal of my 1.1. So that's 1 over 1.122. Make sure when you do this, you do put this section in parentheses, otherwise your calculator will mess it up. And so here, when you plug this in, you should get about 27. Now we want it in quadrant 4. So this is 27, which means our actual answer, which is theta, starts the initial side or 0 and goes all the way around. That would be 360 minus 27, which is 333. So remember, this is 360. We want to go back 27 degrees to get us there. Hope this makes sense. Like I said, we'll go over more of these in detail on class.